Well, good evening again, everybody, and welcome along. This is DriversEye Live, and we are here for the second round of the USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries. I am Brendan Kazmarek, joined tonight by Joseph Mudrak. Hello, Joseph.
Hey, Brendan.
Hey, Joseph. Welcome back. Silent partner last week, but you're with us again for production this week and some odds and ends here and there during the course of the event. And on the third microphone tonight, as he has been for the last two Wednesday evenings, is Scott Michaels. Hello, Scott.
Good evening, Brendan.
Yes, welcome along, and happy to have everybody's company as well. If this is your first week joining us, we're just getting set up for some last-minute practice and then right into qualifying. We've already narrowed the field down to a 40-car grid, as it is every week. And we'll have a quick 10-minute, 3-lap qualifying session, private qualifying for every driver. They'll have the track to themselves to set the fastest possible lap. And then we'll get on with two 30-minute races to kind of round out our Wednesday evening. Scott, I'm going to go to you first. We were together this time last week, and we saw something of a natural disaster on a racetrack.
We did. We were on a track with very little runoff, a lot of very slippery iRacing grass, and also the fact that the lap distances was so small, so we were getting lapped cars almost straight away in the race. Anyone who had any kind of problem ended up right in the lap of the leaders. None of that should be an issue this week. The grass around Laguna Seca is a little bit more forgiving, I think, and there's plenty of space if you do end up spinning, going off track. You shouldn't be bouncing back onto the road. And also the lap times are in the 1 minute 25 range rather than the 50-odd second range of last week. So there's a good amount of space for everyone this week, and obviously everyone's got an extra week of experience. So yeah, looking forward to seeing something a bit more that looks a bit more like a typical GT race this week.
You bring up a good point with having an extra week's experience as compared to last week. Of course, at the preseason event at Okayama with a single 30-minute race there. Last week, like you said, sort of every possible complicating factor sort of played into what we saw on track for the dual 30-minute sprints. This week should be quite a bit better. Laguna Seca, not exactly known as a particularly high passing opportunity track, though, is it?
It kind of depends on the car. I think in a GT3 car, it does present quite a lot of opportunities. Turn 1 in particular, but also some of the curbs with these, we're going to see it, the MotoGP style curbs with the big red sausages on the inside. GT cars can survive hitting them, but it will upset you and will open up opportunities for someone behind you in the next corner. So we're going to see a lot of overtaking due to mistakes from the driver in front, but also there are corners like turn 1 and also the last corner. If you get the combination of the corkscrew and the two downhill left-rights before it right, you can get a run into the last corner as well. So I think it's a good mix of requiring challenge to make a pass, but also having plenty of opportunities available.
Joseph, anything in particular you're looking forward to this evening?
I'm looking forward to how people handle two corners in particular. One's the Andretti hairpin, particularly on the first lap, and then the second is the corkscrew. Really, those are two places where I think you're most likely to see somebody do something dumb and ambitious.
I'll add the corner before the I believe it's turn 6. The corner before the corkscrew. That's easily the most difficult corner on the track to get right. You won't see very many overtaking attempts made there, but if somebody gets it wrong, it's very easy for things to end up either in the barrier on the right or clipping the grass and spinning right in front of the pack, or just opening up a big opportunity for someone to make a pass in the corkscrew, which is never that easy to pull off with it being blind and over a crest. So turn 6 is kind of the corner I'm picking out is going to be a real action spot.
I appreciate your efforts, gentlemen, in carrying us through the initial period of qualifying where we have absolutely nothing to talk about. It's happening now, though. James French, as I started speaking, was on the provisional pole, and just as I've gotten that far, it's become Brendan Baker. The 333 Audi R8 from Pride Racing, as we saw at the SimCraft 24 Hours of Orlando, currently sits on pole. It's 122.645. Nick Rowland in second, your current points leader, and more to come of that discussion a little later on tonight. Alex Gomes in third. Matt Thill making his USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries debut tonight, and he started off awfully well, the man representing Simcraft itself. Reed Sweeney in 5th, James French all the way back to 6th now, just ahead of Andre Azzolini. As we mentioned, this is the 40-car grid that was whittled down over 2 nights of practice earlier this week, or 3 nights of practice, excuse me, earlier this week, and the fastest 40 have made it into the field.
Just
and now have
Smallby,
3
the
laps
next
to put up.
car to cross the line, followed by David Cole.
And I think Smell's improved. He's up into 16th. That's a 125.872 last time around.
Azzolini back around for another lap.
Azzolini into 7th. He does improve up into 5th. So he jumps Reed Sweeney and James French and just falls in right behind Matt Thill. Nick Rowland across the line for his 2nd lap. And that is an improvement to provisional pole. The number 67 Satellite Racing Audi, a 122.599. Just about a half a tenth quicker than Brendan Baker had gone. Hugh North pulls himself, just into the top 10. Right at the bottom of the top 10, as a matter of fact. So it's Rowland, Baker, Gomes, and Sweeney at the moment. Thill in 5th. Azzolini back there did his effort for the time being. Matt Strand is up into 5th. A 123.316. Still just over 7 tenths off of the current provisional pole time.
Tyler Hoffman has not set a lap yet, but I've just seen him go off the track at turn 4, so this lap won't be valid.
We'll jump on board with Tyler as you say that.
So I'm not sure whether he has another lap available to him. I think he does. I think this is lap 1. Ryan Thomas is another driver who is on the track, but actually I think he's invalidated both of his 2 laps, so he'll be starting from the back.
Yeah, so far he hasn't registered a time. He's obviously crossed the line, as you say, but he doesn't have a fast lap registered yet.
Yeah, and if I look on his lap count on iRacing, I can see that both laps 1 and 2 are ... which means that you've invalidated your laps. So yeah, that's the end of the road for him.
Interestingly, Nick Rowland is in the car but sitting in the pit lane. He hasn't left the pits, and I wonder if he's just watching the timing screen in car, waiting to see if he needs to even go out and attempt.
He won't have time to do
lap.
the outlap and a flyer, so he's done.
Oh, also, they do get 3 laps. I was thinking they only had 2. So in that case, Ryan Thomas may be on a lap now. He's just about to come across the line, so we'll see if this one registers.
Matt Strand
nope.
off turn 11 can improve.
Ryan Thomas unfortunately invalidated his 3rd lap, so 3
Ouch.
attempts, 3 strikes, you're out, I'm afraid.
Tyler Hoffman also down there at the back of the field has not set a representative time yet.
Yeah, he's invalidated both of his first 2 laps, so 1 more attempt for him.
Ooh, and he's wide at turn 6.
He's really backing it up.
Yeah, he had missed the apex there, and it caused the car to wiggle as he sort of missed the compression right at the apex. But you can tell he's kind of conservative now because he knows he needs the time in order to not start something like 34th.
Got quite a lot of drivers who only attempted 2 laps rather than 3. Jeffrey Smale has just come across the line for his 3rd lap but didn't improve. He's at a 25.8 on his first attempt and a 26.7 on his 3rd lap.
Tyler here is the last car on track. There's somebody else who also set a time right under him.
And he finally sets the lap. It's a 125.641, good enough for 19th. It's a heck of a lot better than starting 34th.
I think that other driver would be this one, David Cole.
David Cole has finished all 3 of his laps, so he's just circulating. But other than that, I think everyone else is finished at this point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm going to stay on him just on virtue of the fact that he's the only one circulating. But everyone is done with their qualifying laps.
So with that, what we end up with is the points leaders starting race 1 from pole. It'll be Nick Rowland in the number 67 Satellite Racing Audi alongside the number 333 of Brendan Baker. Only a handful of Audi R8s in the field. Certainly the Mercedes being the highest represented manufacturer on the grid. But nevertheless, it'll be 2 Audis leading us to the green flag for half an hour of racing for race 1 here from WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Alex Gomes in 3rd, Reed Sweeney in 4th. The only cars within half a second of the pole time. Again, it's a 1:22.599 from Nick Rowland. Matt Strand in 5th there alongside Matt Thill for Simcraft in P6 as we advance the session along to what will be the grid.
And David Cole is unceremoniously raptured away.
Where did we get up to on the grid, Brendan?
We got to P6, and I think we have a full formation lap here, so I'm going to pause on rolling through the grid so we have something to talk about for the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Can he?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the point standings there, and it's interesting that 2nd place is Blake McCord, who, of course, pulled off that Race of Survival win, race 2 at Lime Rock Park, but he's only qualified 9th for this one. That kind of goes along with his performance at Lime Rock, where he, of course, was near the front of race 2 because of the reverse grid. So he actually, where did he finish race 1? I've only got 60 points for him, so I'm guessing that was towards the back end of the top 10. So that kind of, it makes sense that he qualified to the back end of the top 10 here. Let's just hope there's no mayhem in the first few laps and he can survive and continue building on his points tally.
Yeah, with any luck, it'll be a much cleaner start than we saw at Lime Rock last week. With that said, the race did settle into something like a rhythm for the middle, let's call it 15 minutes or so, before it all kind of kicked off again in lap traffic with about 10 minutes to go. But anyway, it'll be unlikely that we see anything like the amount of lap traffic we saw at Lime Rock last week. That was sort of the catalyst for a lot of the chaos. But with that being said, if the pace is close between anybody inside the top 10 or 15, we could still see some fireworks. I think these GT3 cars are they're heavy.
And also
they rely quite a bit.
Sorry, Scott. I might cut out there, so I thought I'd jump in. But to your point on us hopefully seeing a bit less chaos and a bit less lap traffic, anyone who watched the IMSA Pro Invitational race recently at Laguna Seca would have seen something similar to what we saw at Lime Rock, to be honest. So you never know. There's plenty. These guys are pretend racing drivers, virtual racing drivers, and as such, they'll be as aggressive as they need to be, or they feel they need to be.
How
end up with quite a shuffle field by the end of this 30 minutes.
Given how many of these are at least, have at least dabbled in karting, Scott, how aggressive do you think they're likely to be?
Good luck, give each other plenty of room on the start here.
Sorry, I was got a voice from one of the drivers. I should probably have knew that. Well, we've seen in previous races that there's at Okayama and Lime Rock that there hasn't been enormous amounts of room given, particularly under yellow flag, I guess. For example, at Lime Rock we saw Brendan Baker get run over by Nick Rowland in traffic. That wasn't a yellow flag at the time, but certainly Nick was a good example of someone who perhaps could have left a little bit more margin with Brendan being in a difficult position, which isn't something you would typically learn in karting. Usually it's kart races are decided by hundredths and tenths of a second, so you want to be and contact, of course, isn't particularly punished in karting. Obviously you have to do quite a lot to damage a kart to the point where performance is hurt, so there's perhaps a little element of that we might see, as we have seen at Lime Rock, but we'll see if that carries over to a big track like Laguna Seca.
Yeah, there were a lot of I guess to put it mildly, hurt feelings coming out of Lime Rock, so it'll be interesting in my mind to see how much of that carries over, or whether or not people are able to kind of I guess forget what we ran into last week.
It's a familiar sight if they are going to forget, try and forget what happened last week. It's Rowland on the front row alongside Brendan Baker, as we've mentioned. Gomes, Sweeney, Strand, Thill, Azzolini, French, McCord, and North make up the top 10 as the two Audi R8 LMS swing onto the front straightaway. It's an extremely messy start. Rowland has punched the throttle immediately off of turn 11 and swung right out to driver's right, cuts off Brendan Baker, and it's single file down the front straightaway and into the Andretti hairpin. Rowland from Baker. Gomes back in third. Sweeney is, I think, is held down fourth there, and then it's a little bit of a gap to Strand. Go ahead.
I think Matt Phil there was our first spinner in turn 1, well, turn 2, Andretti hairpin.
He is, and he is stuck to driver's right in the gravel. Your sixth-place starter is now stone last on the field. He's done some good there to let the entire field go by, but it's cost him probably something like 20 seconds and any chance of a decent finish here tonight, barring some chaos at the top. Speaking of which, Baker has caught Roland, and then a wiggle from Gomes has allowed Reed Sweeney right onto the back and through into third up the hill out of turn 6. So it's still 2 Audis from 2 Mercedes, but now Gomes, your second, well, he's not second in points. He started third tonight, but he has now slipped back into fourth with Strand just a little ways behind Gomes there in P5.
Excellent move by Hugh North, diving in late on the brakes into the top of the corkscrew. That would be to take 9th place from Gavin Bailiff. Although Hugh North has now lost it on the way down the hill, unfortunately, he's tracking through the gravel on the outside of the penultimate corner, making sure he rejoins in a safe manner. So that will drop him back down towards
Hugh North in the number 72 has had the moment there coming down the hill. On board with Alex Gomes now in the brakes into the Andretti hairpin again for the second time, 1 lap down. And about 21 laps, we think, tonight to make up the 30-minute sprint, tracing the steps of Reed Sweeney in the Castrol and BP Mercedes just up ahead of him. It's lockstep for the top 4 through the first sector, and then a big gap all the way back to Matt Strand, who has already dropped back about 1.5 seconds from the tail of Alex Gomes' number 64 Mercedes.
Good fight at the moment towards the back end of the top 10. We got Andre Azzolini. Sorry, no, it's a little bit of a gap back to Gavin Bailiff, I think, in the number 12 car. We've got 4 cars together going up towards the top of the corkscrew. A little bit of a look there. It was actually, I got the name wrong. It was Azzolini who made the aggressive move into the corkscrew last lap, and he just attempted the same move again.
Go through Randy Corner. Yeah. Wayne Randy
that's
Azzolini.
And that is Azzolini, and he's trying to rejoin dangerously there. He's managed to get himself corrected. But yeah, that's two laps in a row. He went for an aggressive move into the corkscrew, and unfortunately has used up his talent a little bit and run out on the way down the hill and spun out there, trying to get past James French.
Big dive on the inside of the 133.
Yeah, immediately Andrea Azzolini gets back on form and makes a big dive for that'll be 19th place at this point. But he was battling for 6th place before all that. 7th
at the start from Azzolini, and now, like you said, all the way back to P19, and he's trying to make up for that lost time immediately. And I think he's probably got the pace to do it, but that is going to take him some time in order to get anything back close to where
James French has a really good run on Matt Strand.
Yeah, Strand dropped the wheel coming off turn 5 there. Unfortunately, that straight up the hill is so short, and the braking zone is virtually, well, non-existent into turn 6. Just dab the brakes to set the nose, and then you sort of chuck it into a single lane corner. 4-car breakaway at the front. It's Nick Rowland leading Brendan Baker. Brendan seems to be drawing just slightly closer as he warms up to this. So no room for Nick Rowland to make a mistake. It's
James
kind of a
French
reverse.
Make a move on the inside of the last corner.
And the move's complete. Strand really didn't contest that. French sort of had the run for about half a lap there, and it was really, Strand was sort of hanging on, but I think he realized that French was more likely to be able to chase down Alex Gomes and that lead quartet than Strand was going to be able to, and really no reason to fight it. Strand will just settle for P6 for the time being.
I'm really interested to see how James French, now that he's dispatched of Matt Strand, can he kind of claw back towards 4th and make it a 5-car battle. According to our little extrapolation, we've got 22 laps in this, 18 to go. So there should be time, but he's going to have pretty decent pace advantage in order to make that happen.
Yeah, it's a 7-second margin up to the leader. It's about 5.5 seconds onto the back of Gomes, but that lead 4 have really set themselves apart pace-wise. And even now, it's sort of a lead 3 because Gomes is dropping off the back of Reed Sweeney as the lead 3 run single file down through Rainy Curve.
James French is also suffering from slightly dodgy internet connection as well. So when if and when he does catch these guys up ahead, hopefully that won't cause him any issues. I'll just update you on a crash we had from 25th position coming out of turn 4. Gene Thayer unfortunately caught the grass with his left rear wheel and just spun at about 45 degrees off the track into the barrier and has had to tow. So that's one of our regulars, unfortunately, sitting in the pits.
Good battle on at the moment. The number 4, Matt Hart, defending from West Duchak. I believe this is the battle for P13, a pair of Mercedes headed up the front straightaway through turn 1 and then on the brakes into the Andretti hairpin. Duchak was all over the back of Matt Hart as they came out of turn 10 and into the braking zone for the final corner. And now, indeed, it's Tyler Hoffman who slid wide and let Matt Hart get through, and then he bounced right into the side of West Duchak. In the meantime, I think Matt Hart might have an issue because he's dropped both those spots again and allowed both of them through. And he is just barely able to stay on the track. I don't know if that's intentional, trying to let a couple of cars go. But
spin for our number 64 car, Alex Gomes, from 4th place. It's the corner I was talking about earlier on, turn 6, just before the corkscrew.
Yeah, French is going to get him on the way up the hill here as Gomes recovers.
Yeah, and indeed, that pass has been made.
Yeah, Gomes just clips the grass with the right side tyres on the way in, and it was enough to pitch the car before he ever got anywhere near the apex into a 90-degree to the track slide. Quick recovery, though, because it didn't go all the way around. So only
big move in the back. Big move in the back. Gavin Bailiff up the inside of Matt Strand, and he's just got the car stopped without plowing into the back of the number 29 Mercedes of Strand there. They're going to carry on single file up the front straightaway, but I think Bailiff's got some pace here.
Oh, he's going to make
and
a
he's
move
going to try it again.
Maybe just a feint to the inside. Maybe it wasn't as on as it looked.
So aggressive on the brakes there. I think that Mercedes better getting to the apex, but he's so far back, or has been so far back the couple of times he's tried that move now, he's really had no chance of getting it actually complete. A quick word about Alex Gomes. You could see this sort of developing a few laps ago where that lead trio was starting to drop the number 64 Mercedes, and you could sense that he was sort of pushing a little bit harder to try and keep up. And I think that, more than anything, is probably what led to the mistake headed up the hill into turn 6 there that allowed James French to get through into P4.
So after a relatively clean first lap, unfortunately we've had a bit of calamity towards the back of the field. We've got Matt Hart in the pits, and Hunter Fox has also had a spin. This was kind of all pretty brought about by Nikita Poneris, who's actually a lap down, so he's had problems earlier. Had a spin on the corner after the corkscrew, and it kind of bunched the rest of the field up, and everyone ran over each other a little bit. A few cars getting damaged, and a few cars just having spins. Matt Hart definitely getting the worst of it.
Yeah, we're watching that on replay now. So, Poneris is spun.
Cold tyres, I expect. I think that was his first lap out of the pits.
Yeah, it's just sort of a lazy slide off into the runoff. Watching another replay here, headed down the hill.
Through the same thing. How Hunter Fox getting involved with
this. Poneris was recovering, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was a bit of a concertina anyway, and then obviously Hunter caused a little bit of a panic as well, and it all added together to end up. And we've got, I think that's David Cole in the pits as well. Although I think, are we back to live now?
We are back to live. So Dexter Nakan has been overtaken for 9th here.
So David Cole in the same corner has ended up clipping the grass on this is the left-hander after the corkscrew, has clipped the grass on the way out and ended up in the tyre barrier, so that's why his BMW is damaged.
It's been sort of a quiet run this evening for Dexter Nakan so far. Not really featured in the top 10 as of yet, but as some of the attrition has sort of taken its toll from the back half of the top 10, it's allowed him up into P9. Jason Drescher there in 10th. We haven't mentioned much about him. Gavin Bailiff, excuse me if I've missed this. Did Bailiff have an off trying to get past Strand? I'm certain he did.
I'm not sure.
Let's take a look.
Had a move for third place. Alex Gomes in the 64 has moved past James French. They're now side by side on the way down to Andretti hairpin. Gomes, of course, recovering from that spin at turn 6. French deep on the brakes, but Gomes should be able to hold on to that, taking the ideal line through the hairpin. If
French
I would
is
say
going to faint
if
inside.
French, yeah, he's not going to. It's a difficult corner that with a very little braking zone to get down the inside. I'd say if French is being intelligent, he would sit behind Gomes here because Gomes clearly has more pace and can hopefully drag him up to Reed Sweeney and then the top two in front of that.
Yeah, as it stands, just a couple laps ago, they were 7 seconds behind the overall leader, Nick Rowland, and now it's pushed out to beyond 8. So they're not gaining any time, and racing each other certainly isn't going to help. Like you mentioned, Scott, maybe better here for James French to just sit in behind Gomes. But with that said, off just ahead of the leaders, that's a Mercedes. It's Austin Olds in the number 21 who drifted off at the corkscrew and allowed the 2 leaders through to put a lap on him.
Lap car, so nothing that changes the complexion of the race.
No, indeed. But in any case, we'll see how this Gomes-French situation develops over the next couple of laps. In any case, it'll be taking place for the moment well behind the overall podium. Reed Sweeney still holding it down there in third. He's fallen about 4 seconds off the back of Brendan Baker. So it's the lead 2, still the original 2 off the front row of the grid.
Watching the replay here of Reed Sweeney.
Okay, yeah, so this is probably what I was about to talk about. He had a 1:26 lap time in there, so I think he's got the same pace as the guys in front. As
he's launched it off the apex curve at turn 6, Scott, and it just sent him a little wide at the exit, but he had already destroyed any hope of carrying speed through the corner. Additionally, also destroyed the left front of the bonnet of that car.
Yeah, I noticed that. He picked up a lot of damage from that.
And I don't know if there's a lot of mechanical damage, but his pace isn't quite what it was.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. As Matt Hart, who has come out of the pits, is off at the Andretti hairpin, and so is David Cole, who's also come out of the pits. So a lot of drivers who've had their races already in difficulty. Oh, and another off there. This is Wes Dushak in the Mercedes, spins across the track and almost wipes out another Mercedes. This is out of turn 4.
Yeah, Dushak was involved in the battle earlier with, I think it was...
Oh, and he's still just waiting for a gap. Oh, and he hasn't found it!
And he's pulled out immediately in front. It is Matt Hart.
That's going to end both of their races, unfortunately.
It's
already
ended Hart's. Yeah, that was a bit unnecessary. He waited and waited and waited till he had a gap, and he knew he had a gap. And then it took him so long to actually execute the recovery, but that by the time he did, Hart was on his way out of the corner, absolutely full tilt, and had nowhere to go to miss the recovering Wes Dushak.
Yeah, one of the things that Scott made a mention of last week, actually, is that these cars don't... The traction control is pretty aggressive, and so you can't just gas it and drop the clutch and spin it. It just won't work like that.
You actually can, and I've noticed that Wes was our highest qualifying rookie license driver, and also was our highest running rookie license driver, so I'm guessing Wes isn't hugely experienced with iRacing, but it's possible to, as we see on camera, Matt Phil trying to come back through the field.
This is a three-car battle for 13th, by the way.
This is a great possible.
It's possible to... Sorry, I'll just finish my point. As Matt attempts to come past, I think that's Hugh North. Yes. You can... Oh, sorry, I'll interrupt myself. Nick Rowland from the lead is off at the run down the hill from the corkscrew.
That's
way off. He's gone way off at Rainy Curve.
And he's rejoined right in front of James French. Managed to get away with that. That was a bit of a dangerous rejoin there. He didn't.
Especially unnecessary given how much real estate he had off in the gravel trap to try and actually complete the recovery.
Yeah, I mean,
this right back onto the track, onto the racing line where French was coming down the hill.
It was a collision.
Absolutely right, Joseph.
It was a very optimistic move by Brendan Baker. I think that's a place it is possible to make a pass, but not when you're about 1% alongside the car ahead. So race control may have something to mention, something to talk about there. As in reference to Nick Rowland's recovery there, again, the point I was trying to get out is that you can assign a button to turn off traction control in the car in the options menu in iRacing. I'm not sure whether a lot of these drivers who are less experienced with GT3000 iRacing are aware of that. Clearly not, or they've just forgotten that you can do so. And that can really help you do the flick spin, as Joe was explaining.
Back briefly on board there with Matt Phil, and then from trackside as he heads underneath the Cooper Tires Bridge and into turn 4. They've already dispatched with with, I think, Tyler Hoffman there in the 36, but Phil is still behind North. On the brakes into turn 5, and the Simcraft Mercedes up the inside of the
slow
Mac
traffic's
Minarelli
gonna
Mercedes.
get in their way.
Yep, it's balked Matt Phil. He already didn't have the greatest run coming off the corner because he didn't have all the track, but that car in front has absolutely balked Matt Phil's chance of a run up the hill out of turn 6 because he's slotted in between the number 72 and the 56.
That's pole position. That's Sexter Nakan.
It is. You're absolutely right. He was recovering. He wasn't lapped, but he was so far off the pace that it looked like that might have been the case. So Nakan has every right to be where he is in defending for Matt Phil, but it's cost Phil dearly.
Ooh, that car doesn't seem well. Either that or very dirty tires.
Potentially a bit of both, but he was certainly recovering from some kind of incident. Phil is able to make the move on the outside of turn 11 up the front straightaway, and I think Nakan is also going to lose a spot to Tyler Hoffman, who had just lost the 2 spots from North and Phil going through on the previous lap.
Yeah, so we'll see now if a little deep into the Andretti hairpin. If Phil can bring himself back up to 11th and make that a fight, because it looks like he's going to pull away from the cars behind.
There is some damage on Dexter Nakan's car, but it wasn't that incident we saw him recovering from. That was just a quick spin off to the inside, only really a half spin. So I'm struggling to find the reason why he's... Well, maybe he... No, the car actually looks pretty clean. I think he's just maybe got himself out of his rhythm and needs to take a deep breath and get back into it while he's got a little bit of space on his own.
Brendan Baker, your leader, with just under 4 seconds now of a lead back to Reed Sweeney. He lost a good chunk of that on the previous lap, working through a trio of lap cars, Ben Varner, Josh Olson, and David Cole, all of whom had some kind of drama just in front of him as he came up to lap them. It cost him a little bit of time as they were sort of sorting themselves out, and Josh Olson now does the same in front of Reed Sweeney, but it allowed that lead gap to compress by about a second down to 3.7, and now it's down to 3.5 now, so I'm not sure Sweeney has the pace on his own, but if he can keep catching better luck in traffic than Brendan Baker, then maybe there is a chance to actually make some 8 minutes or so.
Quick spin there for Gavin Bailiff, trying to find his number. It's number 12. In the Audi. He was running in 16th place. We also had a strange crash for Max Calder, who was running 23rd. Just ran up really quickly on the brakes into the Andretti hairpin on Gene Thayer, who's laps down.
Watching the replay here on Fernando Matos, by the way.
Right. Calder just lost it on the brakes and ended up in the wall. He's unfortunately had to tow. Matos there just having a difficult run through the corkscrew.
And then a slightly more difficult run through Wayne Rainey.
Yep, that's not going to buff out, let's put it that way. Matos, we saw having a bit of an adventure during qualifying as well, so he's obviously learning these cars.
Matos, incidentally, one of the few drivers we do have a bio on. He's actually a sim racer with cerebral palsy. Started karting in 2009. His goal was to get up to the Simcraft 24 Hours of Orlando with some of the all-disabled teams that we had seen over the initial 2 runnings of the event. But Matos himself sort of readjusting to sim racing, and then obviously, in a super competitive environment around 40 cars. It's actually not been a bad start there for Fernando.
No, yeah, you mentioned, for example, the number 99 kart that we've seen for the past, the past and first 2 years, right, with the hand controls.
Yeah, absolutely. Race Bionics. He wasn't involved with that team, at least from memory, but there are certainly enough drivers that are involved with that kart that would be a great opportunity for Fernando. He's not off the pace, I'd say. Roland, incidentally, Nick Roland, in his sort of recovery drive.
I think something interesting happened here with Josh Olson. I caught a snippet of what looked like not the correct racing line into the corkscrew.
No, absolutely not even close. He's recovered well, as well as you can when you end up in that position exactly.
Oh, look at who's just put in a new fast lap, Reed Sweeney.
Yeah, I think he's turned up the wick a little bit here. It's not a fastest lap by much, but as the fuel burns off these GT3 cars, if you've taken care of the tires, the pace will increase. And the lead gap is now under 3.5 seconds, but Sweeney still has it all to do with some of the lap traffic that Baker's made it past. namely Wes Duchak back there in... I'm not sure where Duchak has ended up, actually. He's certainly had 24th. He's had an adventure of an evening already.
Yeah, Brendan Baker, one of the Pride Racing cars, which are in a slightly new look compared to what they were running at Lime Rock.
Significantly less colorful.
Yes.
And much to my chagrin, actually. I'm not sure I'm a big fan.
I agree with you. It's harder to pick out as a commentator, that's for sure.
Yeah, especially when the other Audis are also red.
If you don't mind me interjecting, I was just checking in on our battle for 10th place, as that's, or at least our fight for 10th place, as that's going to be the reverse grid for race 2. Andre Azzolini was being held up by Jason Drescher, who is running 9th, and Azzolini running 10th. Azzolini managed to barge his way through on the way into the Andretti hairpin as they passed Max Calder, who's recovering from another incident his laps down. Drescher and Azzolini were 2 seconds slower than Matt Thill, who's running 11th on that last lap. So I'm expecting Thill to be closing in rapidly on what will be Jason Drescher now in 10th place, and indeed he's only a few seconds behind, but there is a lapped car in there as well of Josh Olsen running 23rd. So yeah, that should be a battle to watch for the remaining 10 minutes of this race, or 9 minutes of this race.
Fastest lap of the race from Nick Rowland back and forth, who's currently chasing down Alex Gomes. Brendan Baker, your leader, the lead gap is now just under 2.5 seconds. 2.4 back to Reed Sweeney. Some of that will be to traffic, but some of that will also owe to Reed Sweeney's fastest lap the previous lap as he goes 2 wheels off up the hill, trying to get past the number 34 of Wes Duchak, who has no interest in yielding the spot in the braking zone. Finally, Reed Sweeney is able to cut back to the apex and head down the hill with that front damage still to just the bonnet of the number 9 Mercedes. And it's Andrew Balthus just in front of him, who I think is going to hold him up on the way into turn 11 here and allow Baker to just extend that margin a little bit. There's a lot more traffic in front of Sweeney now. He's got to pinch the exit of the corner there, and it's going to cost him pace all the way up the front straightaway, and he can't even get alongside Balthus as a result. On board now with Sweeney, and there's the BMW's dispatch.
Yeah.
That's Gene Thyre. He's made it past on the brakes into the Andretti hairpin. The gap now is 2.9. So swings and roundabouts here. It's cost Sweeney this time, but overall, he's picked up something like 1.5 seconds on Brendan Baker.
And how critical is it to still have Brendan Baker in sights, right? He hasn't lost that visual cue, that kind of the rabbit to his greyhound.
No, and most importantly, as long as it's not throwing him off rhythm, he can still sort of chase him. But if he's got to do any kind of recovery from scything his way through that traffic, it may take him a lap or two, and that might just be too much or too long to make up that 3-second margin up to the number 333.
The change for 10th place has happened. Jason Drescher succumbed to the pressure at the corkscrew and ran wide. He's lost 2 places to Matt Thill, who moves into 10th place, and Hugh North, who moves into 11th. Matt Thill, obviously, as we know, came from that spin at the Andretti hairpin on lap 1 and has great pace, so looks like he might work his way further through the top 10, but certainly he'll be taking advantage of that reverse grid. There's a spin in front of Matt Thill, and it's Fernando Matos in 71. We know he's laps down. He had that incident coming out of the corkscrew a few laps ago. He's recovering cleanly, running 21st.
And he's come out just ahead of Josh Olsen there for 22nd.
Oh,
but no harm, no foul there, I think, for Matos.
Incident there for number 72, Hugh North, who's now lost 11th place to Jason Drescher. He picked that up on the last lap. Drescher again runs wide in the corkscrew, so these two are going to have a brawl for 11th by the looks of things, which could easily become a reverse grid pole if we have anyone in the top 10 with issues from here on.
Yeah,
Scott gets the prize from... Go ahead, Joseph.
I was going to say, it's going to be a little bit of a fight potentially still between Nick Rowland and James French. They've got just over a second between them.
Speaking of, Matt Thill, who was running in 10th place, has just crashed in, I believe, Rennie Curve. His engine has completely exploded, so that's game over for him. So that moves those two into the battle for reverse grid pole.
How has that happened?
On board with Thill, he drops a wheel. Oh, he's dropped the wheel exiting turn 10. He tried to recover, but the car had already decided it was headed off to driver's right and crunched the concrete wall, unprotected by tire barriers, and it's absolutely destroyed the number 56 Mercedes.
And that's crucial because the point that Scott had just made, which is on the reverse top 10, he would have been on pole for the next race.
Yeah, that is crushingly disappointing, actually.
Yeah, ruins what was a fantastic drive from 32nd up into that position to have a really great points haul, not only in race 1, but an even better one in race 2. But yeah, that's going to... there are still a good 29 cars running, so that's going to drop Matt. He's going to have to... Well, he'll certainly win the award for overtaking the most cars on the night, assuming he has a relatively clean run through race 2. But yeah, real shame there to end the run that way.
Sort of spreading out now at the top, through the top 5 anyway. Gomes,
Well,
Roll, French.
let's keep an eye out for this, Brendan, because this is now the fight for 10th.
You're absolutely right. It's Drescher on the right, Jason Drescher in the Mercedes-painted Mercedes, Petronas. Mag Minarelli's Hugh North to the inside, and I think Drescher's just thought better of it there and realized, well, you know what? 10th is good. Well, it's a heck of a lot better than finishing 11th anyway, but I've still got a few minutes to take care of this now, and maybe fighting all the way down into the braking zone isn't entirely necessary. Hugh North has pulled out a substantial margin already.
Yeah, let's bear in mind that Hugh North has had a couple spins here, so if I'm
He is
Jason, I
recovering, you're
might
right.
be just kind of biding my time and let's see how this plays out. Although that wasn't
Potentially
a great line.
something to be said there for, instead of being swamped by the 10 drivers behind you, maybe just letting yourself start 11th and pick your way through the carnage at the start of the next race. Not that I'm sure that's his mindset, but if you're going to try and find a silver lining from just dropping out of the top 10 at the end of race 1, that might be it.
Sure, yeah, I think that's fair.
2.5 seconds now from Baker back to Reed Sweeney, and I think there are no cars. No, Gavin Bailiff, I think, is between them. Just a moment.
No, the reason I've switched over to Ryan Thomas is because he, at least for a moment, was in a pretty interesting fight for 13th.
Big spin from Chance Kelly.
Yep, you spotted it at the same time as me. Brendan, he's running 23rd, 2 laps down already, so he's had a bit of an adventure. But yeah, another one of the Pride cars reversing himself, bending his rear wing on the tyre barrier at turn 5, I believe.
Oh, Brendan Baker!
Baker's been hit! Baker's been hit! They're 3 wide at the corkscrew as Baker tries to recover. Sort through all that in a second, but the end result is that Reed Sweeney is absolutely onto the back of Brendan Baker. There is nothing to choose between them as we look out the back of the 333 Audi, down the hill out of turn 9 and into turn 10. Baker's going to have to do some quick work here to get back on rhythm, and with 2 minutes and 12 seconds to go, I think we've only got 2 laps. If Reed is going to try and take advantage of this and make the move and try and steal one away from Brendan Baker, who has controlled this race more or less for the last 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, I don't see any visible damage on Baker's car, that was my initial concern, was has he taken a hit to the right front, or the left front, excuse me. It doesn't look like anything substantial.
It was very close, and you could see as the Mercedes got on the brakes that far to the inside, the elevation change is a little different when you're offline, and sometimes, particularly in a driver's aids car, if you've got the ABS cranked way up, it can slow down the retardation of the car. And if that looked to be exactly what happened, is he sort of just sailed right at the apex where you knew Brendan Baker was going to be turning in about a quarter of a second. And somehow, the 3 of them managed to not make any contact by the time they all got there, but it cost Brendan Baker dearly, and sort of remains to be seen here in the next lap and a half to whether or not it'll actually cost him the victory.
Change of position, number 72, Hugh North passes number 31, Alex Slupski, for 9th place. Alex has been slipping backwards with a pace around 125, 126, whereas Hugh North has been in the 23s and 24s the last few laps.
Do you have a sense, is Alex damaged, or could that be strategic?
His car looks clean. I'm not sure it would be a particularly great strategy. You're saying he might be aiming for the reverse grid pole, I'm guessing.
That's the idea. We're on our
We're
final lap.
on the final lap here, gentlemen. I think we are.
Yes,
and
we are.
this is Baker and Sweeney, P1 and P2, for Race 1 honors at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It's Audi from Mercedes.
Then for Nick Rowland in 4th place, he was trying to Alex Gomes.
Just going to mention, he had caught Gomes and really had a chance at him on the last lap if he was going to try and make a lunge, and he's just cost himself any chance of doing that.
Well, he had a lunge in the second apex of the Andretti head, which is an odd place to try. Gomes shut the door as he was entitled to do, and Roland had to take a half spin across the inside of the circuit.
Hasn't cost him a position. It's only cost him some time there off the back of Gomes. As far as I can tell, French is still 5th, about a second off the back of Nick Rowland. But back at the front, Reed Sweeney, a huge lunge on the brakes, can't do anything to try and pass Baker, but he's closed up the margin substantially. He backs up the apex at turn 9. Baker is still ahead as they swing back to the left.
Is he going to make a move in the last
turn
corner?
10. It's going to be his only chance, but I think he's going to be just too far back. Baker goes defensive. Reed Sweeney swings it wide, tries and gets the cutback, but he can't do it. Baker has just enough of a launch off the final corner to take the checkered flag at race 1 from WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca and the USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries. Alex Gomes comes home in 3rd with plenty of margin back to Roland, who did in fact lose 4th, didn't he?
Yeah, I wanted to let you call the last corner of the race leaders, but it was on the way down the hill. He got stuck behind a lapped car, and it just set him off his rrhythm, and he seemed to get out of kilter a bit and spun in the left-hander and ended up losing the place to James French.
Interestingly enough, you wouldn't say that Roland sort of cost himself that position directly by that awkward move up the inside of the Andretti hairpin, but sort of indirectly. He wouldn't have been anywhere near that position if he had just sort of backed things off and settled for 4th. Instead, he's dropped to 5th, and it's cost him a handful of points as the points leader.
That's a good point, actually, because Blake McCord, who we were talking about before the start, brought home a solid 7th place finish, which, yeah, as you say, is going to move him forward towards Nick Rowland. He's only 15 points behind. I think that could be pretty close after this race. Andreas was 3rd, and he finished 8th, right behind Blake McCord. So another driver. Sorry, no, I've got that totally wrong. Nick Rowland still finished ahead of both of them. So neither of those two drivers will be making a move forward in the championship. But yeah, Nick Rowland certainly could have increased his championship lead more than he has. But actually, yeah, still not a terrible day considering he beat Blake McCord and Andrea Azzolini by 2 or 3 positions.
Yeah, largely unforced errors that led him to that position, though. He obviously had been battling for the lead very early on, started the race from pole, but it kicked him all the way back to 5th. Matt Strand finishes race 1 in 6th. McCormick currently 2nd in points. Andrea Azzolini, the one of the Pride Audis, there in 8th. Hugh North in 9th, and Alex Slipsky finishes 10th. And after all that, including the dramas with Jason Drescher and Hugh North sort of scampering his way up the field, Slipsky is going to start race 2 from pole.
Yeah, I mean, certainly adds a little bit of evidence to Joseph's hypothesis that might have been an intentional drop through the field from Alex. He certainly started the race in the 24s and 25s, and then ended it in the 26s and 27s. So slightly suspicious there. And then his final lap was a 25 again. So when he secured possibly the position that we're hypothesizing he may have been aiming for, you do get $100 off the entry to the Simcraft 24 Hours of Orlando for a win. You don't get anything for second. So if you're, or in his case, 6th or 7th. So yeah, if that $100 is what you're looking for, then what better place to start for race 2 than pole position?
Yeah, worth noting, too, Alex did not participate last week at Lime Rock Park, so essentially out of anything resembling a championship run. And like you said, if you're going to try and make the most of the opportunities you have, if you can't go for a championship, individual race wins are of actual monetary value for next year's Simcraft 24 Hours of Orlando. So he's put himself in a good position there, intentional or not, and to his credit, you play that strategy, sometimes it actually will work out in your favor. Jason Drescher, as we sort of had touched on there, he was in that battle for the bottom end of the top 10. He ends up P11, Cole Matthewson in 12th, Ryan Thomas 13th, Gavin Bailiff in 14th, and Jeffrey Smale in P15. Hunter Fox is P16 at the end of the night. Andrew Balthas in 17th, I think, is the first non-Audi or Mercedes. That's the first of the BMW Z4s to finish the race. Only 17th, though, so it's clearly an event or a championship that's being dominated at the moment by the other German manufacturers.
Yeah, doing a little bit of analysis on the results, particularly looking at the gaps in between the drivers at the finish. I'd say that really kind of Jason Drescher in 11th was the back end of our drivers who had a relatively clean run. We still know that Drescher had an off. We saw Andrea Azzolini in 8th place had a spin at one point. U North had a very early spin, I think. But behind Jason Drescher, who was 53 seconds off the win, we've got Cole Matthewson, who came from 25th, and Ryan Thomas, who came from 34th. So those guys lost some time early on coming through the field. Everyone behind those two were a lap down and starting relatively high in the field. So I'm guessing that's really where our set of drivers who had various levels of catastrophe throughout the race have all finished.
Worth noting, by the way, Matt Phil in his recovery ended up 18th. So all things considered, after destroying the Mercedes coming out of turn 10, 18th isn't a bad way to finish that off.
Something I'm not sure we've addressed yet in our USAC karting broadcasts is, do these drivers get a reset? I would guess so, otherwise Matt Phil's car.
I think there is a fast repair available, yes. Right,
so he presumably took a quick tow because his crash happened at the penultimate corner, so that tow would a few seconds. A quick fast repair, straight back out on the track and managed to get 18th, so nowhere near the 32nd place starting, or the 28th place starting position I was predicting for him for race 2, so that'll be useful.
Enjoying a fascinating carnage montage courtesy of producer Joseph Mudrak here. Some of the stuff we didn't get to see during the course of our first half hour of racing tonight, maybe for the best, actually.
I give the people what they want.
As I was alluding to earlier, from 14th on downwards was at least looking at the results, looks like it was pretty eventful, and that's over half of our drivers, of course. So yeah, there was plenty going on behind the top 10 that it's difficult to keep up with, but when you're trying to track the battle for the lead and the battle for reverse grid pole, and yeah, that's a lot of the incidents we're seeing now.
That's pretty well held.
So if this is your first time joining us and your first opportunity to check in on the USAC Karting Invitational eSeries, the way these races sort of run through the rest of the evening is a quick break now until the second race session starts. That don't have the evening schedule in front of me, but the sessions will be set up on iRacing here momentarily by league promoter TJ Halsema. 8:20. We'll have a quick practice session, I think 20 minutes, and then roll onto the grid, which is set, as we've already mentioned, by the race 1 finishing results with an invert of the top 10. So we'll have sort of a break here in between the end of our race 1 activities and the start of the meaningful running of race 2. Another half an hour, no pit stop, sort of maniacal sprint to the end of our second point scoring round, third week of racing for the USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries.
I think in this montage we just figured out what happened to Dexter Nakan because he came across broadside the stricken Audi of Nikita Poneris.
Nikita had more of an adventurous race than we've seen him before. At Okayama and Lime Rock, we were kind of making him famous for his drives through the field, but definitely today. Maybe just not getting used to that Audi R8 as well as his Ferrari 488 he's been running in the previous 2 races. But yeah, a lot of incidents for him today.
It's a good point, actually. That change of cars isn't insignificant. And the Ferrari, he was really the only Ferrari that was regularly competing week to week. Certainly the Audis have been a little stronger and had a more representative showing. But it can take some time to adjust, and if you're not completely comfortable with the car, especially once you've mastered not mastered, but you've become comfortable at least in what the Ferrari 488 offered, it might just be combined with maybe a less forgiving track at Laguna Seca than you might see at like Okayama. It might just have cost him tonight, and unfortunately really hampered any chance he had of working his way through the field.
Okay, so shall we take a break as we reset for race 2?
I think that sounds like a very wise plan, Joseph. Typically no post-race interviews after race 1. Drivers also themselves taking a moment to collect their thoughts and make their necessary apologies after race 1. Plenty of that going on at the moment. But like we said, around 8:20, the practice session will kick off. We'll be silent for most of that, and then as we approach the grid process for race 2 around 8:30 to 8:40, myself, Brendan, and Joseph Mudrock and Scott Michaels will be back on both YouTube and Facebook for race 2 from round 2 of the USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries. Happy to have your company on DriversEye Live, and yeah, we'll be back with you here in about half an hour's time. Well, good evening again, everybody, from WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. This is DriversEye Live, Race 2 from Round 2 of the USEC Karting Invitational eSeries. Myself, Brendan Kazmarek, alongside Joseph Mudrak and Scott Michaels, as we were just about 25 minutes ago from the end of Race 1, our first half an hour of competition, that in addition to awarding full points, also extremely fun way sets the grid for Race 2. As we mentioned at the end of the first race, it'll be an invert of the top 10, and then from 11th on back, it's exactly what we saw at the end of the first half an hour of competition, plus the top 2 from Room 2, this sort of overflow room that runs in concurrence with Room 1. Will be joined for the second race tonight by Jonathan Patterson, the number, and Chris McCoy, the number 24 Mercedes AMG GT3. So, Scott, I'll go to you first. Race 1, done and dusted. We've got about a 3-minute pace lap here, and then another half an hour of racing. Anything in particular you're looking for the last half hour today?
See the results of the last race. 14 cars. So I think that
A lot of what we saw, I think, in Race 1 was it wasn't so much cars running away from each other or from the car behind them just because of a pure pace thing. Being made here and there, as we've mentioned. Still a new series, and a lot of these drivers are new to iRacing and new to GT3. And I think it sort of lent itself to some violently expanding and then shrinking gaps and cars racing each other that wouldn't have otherwise really been around each other very much. And now those cars that sort of did that through the back end of the top 10 are going to be starting at the front of the field. Hugh North is obviously up there. We mentioned that Alex Slipsky is going to be starting on pole alongside him, Blake McCord and Andre Azzolini on row 2. But it'll be interesting to say, like you said, just how much or how long those the lead 4 can sort of stay ahead of the much more obviously quick cars behind them, and whether or not that plays a part in us getting sort of a clean run through the first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, and a few more storylines, of course, from Race 1 is we're wondering whether Alex Slupski has more pace than he showed at the end of the race. So we'll be break and starts running some 23s, and we'll know that this was all part of the plan. Obviously, we've got Blake McCord, who was second in the championship on the way into today, and I imagine probably still is, considering he put in a solid run to 7th place. So hopefully he can stay clean and start giving Nick Rowland a run for his money in the points. And then we've got Brendan Baker and Matt Thill, who both had a lot of pace in Race 1, but had Brendan Baker obviously won the race and therefore is starting 10th. And then Matt Thill had a couple of major issues that means that he's going to be starting down in 6th.
So back up to the front row as we head towards the green flag. Alex Slipsky to driver's right. Hugh North to driver's left, the number 72. It's Mercedes on the front row, headed up towards the green flag. We get a green flag, and it's a little more orderly this time, but up at the it is, I think, Alex Slipsky who's sort of made the jump. Indeed, it is Hugh North in second in that Mac Minarelli Mercedes AMG. There's contact in the midfield. I think that's Roland, perhaps, who just got in a little of contact with Brendan Baker there. Blake McCord slides back a little bit, and Matt Strand is sort of the beneficiary of all that, who ends up P5 as they come underneath the Cooper Tires Bridge and in through turn 4.
Got a trio of cars getting Perry Herndon, Andrew Balfez, and Max Calder trailing the field.
Oh, Andre Azzolini really sketchy on the brakes down into turn 5. I think he was a little late there locked up maybe just a little bit in Hugh North, who is being hampered by Alex Slipsky for a little bit of pace on the way up the hill. Azzolini just about got into the back of that number 72. So, Slipsky, North, Slipsky's wide. They're 3 wide, and Azzolini is going to come out best of everybody. He was able to punch the throttle, not being held up by the recovering Alex Slipsky. North had to back out of it, but it meant that Andre Azzolini was able to just scoot right on through on full power on the way down the hill, and he's taken the lead. There's a big defensive move on back down the grid. That's Matt Strand, who's being passed by Brendan Baker on the brakes into turn number 11. James French comes in behind the two of them and locks the brakes up, and he himself is now under attack from Alex Slipsky, who at the end of the first lap has gone from P1 to P7.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but important development in the championship race. Blake McCord got spun out by Reed Sweeney coming out of the corkscrew. He's picked up damage hitting the wall, unfortunately, and is down the field in... Well, I'm trying to find him. I can't find him right now, but he's down the field. In fact, he's come in the pits, that's why I can't find him.
I see him
He's
at
down
28th
and just come across the line.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a disaster for his championship.
Certainly for the time being, you can't afford anything like that if you're going to sort of make a charge up against Nick Rowland, who sort of seems to consistently up in the top 5. For the moment, he's made it up to P2, so it's Audi 1 and 2 again. Azzolini leads Rowland from Hughes French, and go ahead, Scott.
It's a great start from Brendan Baker is all I was going to, the point I was going to make, coming from 10th up to 4th already, and he looks like he's got a complete...
Let's scoot the camera back just a little bit to Alex Slipsky in the number 29. Reed Sweeney has snuck through, I think, for P7. Indeed, he has. Gomes attacks on the brakes into turn 9 there from Alex Slipsky. So I think we've got the answer to your initial question, Scott, as to whether or not Alex really had the pace at the end of race 1. It certainly doesn't seem to have carried anything over into race 2, and he's fallen back almost to where he finished that first half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a couple of mistakes has really put him in the position to be dropping back. We were looking for him to get a clean break and maybe set some laps out in clean air, and that might have been enough to give him the gap ahead of the guys recovering from the reverse grid. But yeah, he made a mistake at the top of the corkscrew, and then another one on the way down the hill in rainy cut.
For P3, Brendan Baker is antagonizing the back of Hugh North's number 72 Mercedes. They both made little mistakes exiting turn 4. Baker sort of came off worse, having dropped 4 wheels off the backside of the curb. North only dropped 2. Now that's from being held up by Nick Rowland, who I think just snuck through into P1, just ahead of Andre Azzolini. Azzolini's late on the brakes, and he's going to take Rowland out at the top of the corkscrew. He's clipped Rowland on the way down the hill. Rowland slides through the gravel and recovers. North spins in sympathy of all. Rowland is dropped from P1, although he never officially led a lap, all the way back to P7.
He almost got taken out by Matt Strand, who was having his own issue in the next corner. Matt now
that would have been a little satellite-on-satellite action.
There was between those two cars as Matt was spinning across the track there, so that was very lucky.
Unbelievably, this has all resulted in a Pride 1-2. There's a lot to sift through here, but somehow Brendan Baker, your race 1 winner who started P10 just 3 laps ago, hard to believe, has passed Andre Azzolini, his teammate, and like we mentioned, Pride first, Pride second, James French in the number 45, Mercedes sits third, and then Reed Sweeney is just off the back of that number 45 for P4.
Matt Phil has also come through from 16th. He's just picking them off one at a time. I've been watching him on and off. Very clean run so far. And is up to 8th, right on the back of Alex Slipsky, our pole sitter.
Ooh, Gomes drops a wheel and braking for turn 5. That's the number 64. He gets sideways on the way in. The car sort of catches itself. And then up ahead of him, Reed Sweeney drops a wheel on the exit of turn 5. He is able to catch the car, but it's bunched up 4th, 5th, and 6th on the way up the hill, and that 6th place car is the recovering Nick Rowland. Black flag, importantly, for Andre Azzolini for taking out Nick Rowland up at the top of the corkscrew. No surprise, but I think this is our first evidence of an in-race black flag from race director Jason Burgess.
Yeah,
and I think in this case quite warranted.
And yeah, that one was pretty straightforward, I think, and he's serving that now.
Matt Strand in the number 18 car has had a big incident at the at turn 6 before the corkscrew.
Yeah, he sure has.
Ryan Thomas, who had a spin going on into the corner. I believe, is that Jason Drescher also got? Yeah, Jason Drescher.
Matt Hart also, just as we in the camera picture.
Yeah, Matt Hart.
He clobbers Andrew Balthus trying to recover that car. Oh, Strand's got big damage on that car. He's doing everything he can to hang on to it, but I don't think
so. So is Drescher. Unfortunately, that was a battle that was just on the edge of the top 10. So those guys dropping out of those positions and leaving that up to the likes of Wes Dushak, Austin Olds, and David Cole, who are battling for 9th, 10th, and 11th.
So the result of all this is we've lost Azzolini, and it's allowed Brendan Baker to pick up more or less where he left off race 1, but just a violently different pathway. He leads from James French in P2, Reed Sweeney 3rd. Really a good evening for Reed so far. He had a pretty solid race 1, apart from nailing the apex curve at turn 6 about halfway through the race. And then he's now finds himself in the 3rd step of the podium, which is an awfully strong start. Just up ahead of Alex Gomes in 4th, and then Nick Rowland, as we said, on his recovery drive from being punted by Andrea Azzolini there in P5.
Number 82, Jeffrey Smale, just had an incident coming down through the corkscrew, I believe. He was running 9th. Actually, I believe he was running slightly higher than that. He's now running 9th. He's lost a place to Wes Dushak.
Rowland on the inside of Gomes into the Andretti hairpin.
And he's gotten the move done. We've seen all night Rowland's got pace, and he's particularly got pace on Gomes. This was, I think, a repeat of what we saw at the end of race 1, wasn't it? Between Gomes and Rowland up the inside of the Andretti hairpin?
It was, but it didn't go cleanly at the end of race 1.
No, this time it did, and I don't think Gomes fought it particularly hard, but the move was much more decisive from Nick this time. And the car is, as far as we can tell, undamaged, so it's not like he's nursing it.
Olsen is recovering from a spin out of turn 3. It looks like he's hit the wall really hard, so this car's going to be damaged. He is down in P30, so presumably not his first incident in the race so far.
Yeah, we're watching that replay now.
If we're on Championship Watch, another interesting point is that Andrea Azzolini was 3rd coming into the Laguna Seca round, so him taking a 30-second drive-through penalty, I think that's what you get for a black flag, is going to really hurt, again, his championship run. So that just opens things up further for Nick Rowland and Alex Gomes, who are next. Ryan Thomas was 5th coming into this round, and we just saw him get into a crash as well. So it looks like it's boiling down nicely to Nick Rowland versus Alex Gomes at the top of the championship.
Reed Sweeney has just set 2 fastest laps in a row. You see the bright pink banner across the top of the screen, fuchsia even. This time, Reed Sweeney 122.615, and that's just a couple hundredths quicker than he did last time. But you can see on screen the gap is visually closed to James French just up in front, and the two of them still have Brendan Baker very much in their sights. This race is only, 7 laps old now, and still 2/3 of the race left to go. This is very much all to play for within at least the top 3, probably the top 4. Nick Rowland is still within 3 seconds of this lead trio, and Reed very much has the pace to be able to hang with and potentially pass James French as well. Ooh, little mistake there from Reed. He dropped the wheel onto the curb in braking for turn 6. I think just pushed the boundary a little too far, and it slid him wide right past the apex and onto the exit curb. He dropped a wheel, lost the speed up the hill, and it's cost him dearly. From being right on the back bumper of the number 45 Mercedes, now all of a sudden he's upwards of behind second place.
Yeah, and he's started to fall back a bit back towards Nick Rowland.
Yeah, Rowland is going to hang with Sweeney there. I think his lap-for-lap pace is very, very similar to what that number 9 Mercedes is capable of. His fastest lap is certainly within a 10th, and I think Nick realizes that with 2/3 of the race left to go, there's every opportunity for not just a podium, but even an opportunity to chase down James French, and with any luck, Brendan Baker once they start getting into some of the lap traffic as well.
Taking a look back a little bit further through the field, again, I like to pick out guys who've made really good starts from further back in the field. Our highest climber right now, up 16 positions, is our man Nikita Ponaris again. He's got a habit of doing this. Had a bit of a disaster in race 1, but a lot of the previous races we've seen him come to the field. He's running.
Prove you wrong, Scott.
Well, he's come through from 30th to 14th at this point. We've also got Gene Thayer, who we saw have a crash early in race
and
1.
Chance, you'd have a good
He's
pack
now
of beer
running
up
11th,
on
having
you.
started 25th, so that's another great run, although he's under a lot of pressure from Hugh North right now, who takes a dive into turn 6 and takes that position, so down to 12th for Gene Fire.
We pick up Hugh North. Yes, through turn 6 and on the way up the hill. This is P12 for Hugh.
Gene's losing positions quite quickly at the moment because Matt Strand's just gone through as well. These are two guys who are recovering. Matt Strand. Actually, that's not a position. Obviously, Matt Strand had. Oh, there's a Pride car off on the inside there. It's Chance Kelly, who we've seen have. He's been the furthest back running of the Pride cars fairly consistently all evening. Once again, a lap down in 28th place.
I'll find him eventually. Don't worry.
Sorry, I should start giving you numbers. It's 666. There you go.
Yeah, there's a couple different Pride numbers that I'm used to, and I went with the 3 of them that I was familiar with. I was leading in the 20, which is really throwing me for a loop.
Spin to the inside of turn 11 there, just coming off the corner. That is Adam. Nope. It's David Cole in the BMW Z4, one of the few examples in the field, and he's looped it on the exit of turn 11 coming onto the front straightaway. Fortunately, unlike we've seen too many times tonight, it's a clean rejoin. Well, I say that. That drops 2 wheels going up. But he lets everybody through on the inside and was able to find enough of a gap in traffic there to make the 180 and pick up racing again.
I'm going to mention one more driver who's come through the field quite nicely.
Hold on. Just a minute, Scott, because I think we've had a change for second here.
We did. Reed Sweeney. I was just going to interrupt Scott before you did, so thank you for that. He's gone through James French up into second overall. French P3 is now very much under attack from Nick Rowland, so it's a quick change there for the second step on the podium, and Reed had just set the fastest lap of the race again the previous lap. It was a 1:22.580 that now stands as sort of the purple lap time of the race, if you will, as we sort of see on our timing monitors. And he's now got something like half the race to chase down Brendan Baker just over a second and a half ahead.
Quick crash at the top of the corkscrew between a few drivers running further down. We've got 18th, 19th, and 20th. It's Fernando Matos, Chris McCoy, and Max Calder all coming together. Fernando Matos, number 71. He's our driver with cerebral palsy. He had a quick trip across the grass on the inside of the corner, which caused the back end to come out, and the other two just piled in, unfortunately. All back running again, however.
Yeah, it looks like we're catching up to Azzolini, the car who's now lapped after having served that black flag.
That threw me a bit. It's a chance, or I'm sorry, the Pride Audi again. Oh, and he's just jumped on the brakes to let James French and Nick Rowland go. But it was sort of on the racing line as they were still taking the exit of Rainy Curve, and just narrowly able to avoid the back of the Audi was James French and Nick Rowland in behind him. That was awfully sketchy and not sort of the place I would advise hitting the brakes or letting somebody go, but they were able to sort of navigate around the backside of that Audi. Excuse me.
Segueing back to a point I was trying to make earlier before we had a change for second place, we've got Wes Dushak right on the back of Alex Slupski. Wes is a high climber in the race. He's come from 21st up to 8th, and he's also our highest running rookie license driver, so someone with limited experience in iRacing, so that's a great run from him. So.
Spin for Chance Kelly, you see on the feed there, that's the number 666 just coming out of the corkscrew.
He's running quite slowly.
Now I think he was letting that gaggle go, and now he's picked up the pace again. That battle with Wes Duchek and Alex Slipsky in the number 29 just sits in P7 at the moment. Duchek has had an awfully adventurous last few races, really. It's not been the cleanest start for Wes.
You've got a battle for the lead right now, Brendan.
Oh, yeah. So
Brendan Baker's been caught by Reed Sweeney quite rapidly. I don't know if there was a mistake in there. No way to pass on the way down the hill here, but we'll see if Reed can. I just missed the apex. Sorry, I'm actually watching the feed slightly behind you guys, but I'm
going to jump to a replay really quick for Brendan Baker, which might show us how Reed got so close to him.
Yeah, this is Baker on the way up the hill through turn 6.
Oh, wow.
The compression,
That's
drops
very
the
well
wheel.
held.
He did a really nice job there.
That's a really difficult mistake to make in a car with ABS. You would usually lock the brakes, and it would sort of try and stop the spin, and send the car back in the right direction. But in a car with ABS, it's all down to steering inputs. There's nothing you can do with locking the brakes. So that was a great save.
And to only lose about a second there, never mind losing the position, was really well held by Brendan. I hope he doesn't need any more luck over the course of the race.
Well,
he might have used it all up there.
So the dynamic that is starting to play out, it makes me wonder if the only competition Brendan's going to have for this win is going to come from behind Sweeney, if it's going to come from Nick Rowland making a charge up, because Sweeney wasn't really able to capitalize on that mistake from Baker, and he's only drifted a little further back at this point. So I think if Brendan Baker can maintain this pace, I think he's going to be able to hold off at least Reed Sweeney.
I will say this, based on what I've seen from Reed Sweeney's lap times, I think Sweeney is able to string a handful of laps together very, very quickly. And then I don't know if it starts to overheat the tires, or he needs to back off and just let himself settle into a rhythm before he attacks again. But like you see, he's sort of dropping off the back of Baker again after that mistake from the Audi. And as Baker charges up the inside, there's a spin from the BMW, and he spins right into the path of the world's unluckiest sim racing driver.
Roller steering is broken.
I think that was half in frustration, half in mechanical difficulty there. I think that Nick, as I said, maybe the most unlucky sim racer in our USAC Karting Invitational eSeries, and absolutely nowhere to go to avoid the spinning BMW, and it's taken him right out of third place.
Now, where is Brendan Baker here? Brendan's fallen all the way back to sixth. Talk about the commentator's curse.
And that was Andrew Balthus, just to make that point, that spun in the BMW. And then he collected most of the rest of the top three anyway. So that point we were going to make about Reed Sweeney being able to sustain any sort of pace over a few laps is now sort of moot, because he has 3 seconds in hand over James French.
Yeah, and now the question is going to be, can he sustain that pace differential over James French? I mean, you see he's got a decent amount of damage on the front end from that collision. I think all 3 of them incurred damage in that.
They do. Phil's got damage to the front end. I think the only one near the front of the field that really doesn't have any damage to speak of is Alex Gomes in the number 64.
Well, you say that, but Alex Gomes had to take wildly evasive action from that as well, rather than run into the back of the BMW. But he did get away without damage, and that's why Matt Phil was able to make his way past. And then speaking of damage, Alex and people's championship hopes being damaged, Alex Gomes is now really the only guy who was in the top 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 of the championship coming into today who is running high in this race, having not had an issue. So it's going to be important for him to try and keep as clean as possible for the remainder of the race.
You are absolutely correct, and it's not even like Nick Rowland is in any sort of recovery drive. Nick Rowland has retired. He is no longer participating in this race. So any points Alex gains from here on out, or any points he picks up, whether it's he's able to gain any more positions or he comes home in P4, is going to be a huge championship haul for Alex. Absolutely. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Alex, and I'm not sure he's aware of this, it is only a 5-race championship. This is race round 2, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him dial back the aggression and just sort of ride behind Matt Phil in the hopes that he either Phil makes a mistake and he's able to get through, or he stays far enough off the back that he doesn't get collected in anything awkward.
He looks like he wants to make a move on Matt, just from his body language.
I think he's probably got pace over Matt.
It's also questionable how aware he is of not only his own championship position after race 1, but also the positions of those drivers who were in the top 10 coming out of Lime Rock. It's really surprising me that we've got an entire top 10 right now, really consisting of guys who weren't in the top 10 in the championship coming.
Which is totally going to turn the entire table upside down, basically, or at least make it way tighter.
Yeah, race 1 was something slightly more in line with what we see in the championship table. It's not entirely, but at least a little closer. Ooh, Gomes drops the wheel into braking for 5, and he spun the car. I was just about to make a point that the only reason he was even riding behind Phil is because of the evasive action he had to take in the crash that took out Nick Rowland, and really didn't need to push very hard because he certainly had plenty of pace, but he's made his own unforced error anyway.
we've seen him do that a number of times. He had a
Yes.
half race 1 because he dropped the wheel to going into turn 6. I think we've seen earlier on in this race in turn 5 he dropped a wheel and just got away with it, and he's done it again. So
this is the
I'm not sure if
replay
he's aware of the
looking-
width of his Mercedes.
Yeah, just drops the curb, drops the wheel on. That curb is very narrow. It's about a tire width wide. And
Yeah,
you can use it to your advantage to widen up the radius there, but it's also very easy to overdo it.
I was just about to say, I mean, you can't fault him for not using the whole width of the track.
Yeah, just overstep the bounds a little bit. And that's all it takes.
We've
Yeah,
got
I mean,
this
obviously,
fight for 6th going on here now.
This is that Slupski and Ducek battle that has gone on for at least the last 10 minutes between the 29 and the 34. And
Yeah.
they're pretty even for pace by the looks of things.
And then while we're here, we've also got a fight on for 8th, right behind them.
Is this
Hugh North
Matt
in the 72.
Strand coming back through the field? Which I'm trying to work out
No,
which.
it's Jeff Smale. Excuse me.
Yeah, and Hugh North behind him. Hugh North in that 72 McMinarelli Mercedes.
No, I was correct. It is Matt Strand, but obviously he's lapped, having
Yes.
had a heavy crash earlier on in the race.
Oh, and
Oh,
he's
don't
going to dive up the inside of Hugh North.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, Matt. I don't think you're really part of this race.
No, and now Hugh is, I think, a little distracted because he's dropped a wheel off in that same braking zone that caught Alex Gomes out just a lap ago. Just a point to the front of the field, Reed Sweeney is, I wouldn't say running away, but
Unchallenged?
he's maintaining the gap to James French.
Oh.
Pretty. Go ahead.
No, it looks like we might have the move on for 8th here.
Yeah, he's really just let him go coming up the hill. There's really not any contest there. I think North has the pace to be ahead of Smale anyway. Just some unforced errors from Hugh earlier in the race that sort of left him back in this position, but Smale didn't really seem to want to have anything to do with contesting that any further.
Yeah, let's just spare a thought for Brendan Baker here. No, the damage to the back of his car doesn't look terrible. There's nothing on the wing, or at least nothing has kind of been imparted to the wing. But the bumper's kind of been barged against, I guess.
I think Brendan's got a little push on here at the moment to try and catch Matt Thill for 3rd. I think he's got pace over Thill. He's just under 4 seconds in arrears, but that last time around he was 1.2 seconds quicker than the number 56 Mercedes. He's got a lap car ahead of him. It's Max Calder in the number 22 Audi. But if he's able to keep the pace up and keep pushing like he is, he might get to the end of the race. Might.
Yeah, we've got
I think we're looking at about 4 more laps. Is that right? 4 to 5?
God, yeah, the race is blown by already, so
It's
totally...
amazing.
Okay, so small off track for Dexter Naka.
Yeah, Naka, and that happened more or less right in front of the leaders. Reed Sweeney, and it did happen right in front of the leaders.
Yes, right, yeah, right in front of James French. Who...
Yeah, Sweeney's come through. He's through turn 3 now. The lead is still 3 seconds. So really no pressure from behind Sweeney if he can keep, managing this pace right around a mid 123. French has dipped into the 22s for the first time. But again, Brendan Baker, 122.497 the last time around. Is that right? And that's put him under 3 seconds now behind the rear of Matt Thill's Mercedes.
Yeah, a little bit of background information. Timing infers that this will be another 22-lap race, with Sweeney, our leader, currently on lap 18.
Right, so 4 more laps to work then.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah, so just about 4 and some change. Sweeney
Got
through...
this,
go ahead.
Sorry, we've got this number 29 and 34, Wes Dushak and Alex Slupski battle coming back together again. It keeps sort of acting like a slinky, going, stretching out a little bit to a second or a second and a half, and then coming straight back together again. But yeah, these two having a great fight. Nowhere through right now for Dushak, although he does have a little bit of a peak at the top of the corkscrew. Let's see if he can set him up coming down the left and right here. Again, this right-hand corner, Wayne Rainey curve.
Oh, he's right there, Scott. He is right up against the rear diffuser of that Mercedes.
Oof.
Ducek dives to the inside. Slipsky really jumped hard to driver's right, I think, to take a normal line, but it opened the door right up for Wes, who, if anything, sort of had to take avoiding action not to clip the back of Slipsky in the braking zone, and it rewarded him with P6.
Yeah, Slipsky tried to do an undercut, but completely overbit the curb on the inside and got the car out of shape, which cost him a run onto the front straight and down to Andretti hairpin. So it looks like that position has now been settled, but these guys have been running really close together for the last 10 or 15 laps, so I'm not expecting Dushak to be able to pull away too easily. So we'll see if Slipsky can stay on his rear and mount another attack to get that 6th place back.
A lot of what we see, because so many of these drivers are new to iRacing and sim racing, is imperfection. And it's not to say they don't have natural or raw pace. I mean, they are still racing drivers and karting drivers at the very least. But you do get some inconsistencies, and other than maybe 4 or 5 drivers at the top of the field, I think drivers like Slipsky or Dushak are more likely to make a few mistakes here and there, and that's what keeps some of these battles so close. They are evenly matched on pace, but it's going to sort of accordion back and forth and keep each other in contention until one of them makes a mistake they can't recover from. But for the time being, it's been a great battle between the two of them.
Yeah,
we have an incident for Alex Coombs.
Let me check that. I'm just following this battle for 13th, which is, I think, the closest thing we have on track other than that battle that we just saw.
I think we've had an incident for the number 64 of Alex Gomes.
Okay.
Well, perhaps not. Perhaps it's timing messing with me.
I think it might be timing messing with you.
Oh, golly.
It's been going up and down a little bit recently. It's going back to the Slipsky-Dushak battle. It's worth noting that Dushak has never done an official iRacing race. He's a rookie with a 1350 iRating. And Alex Slipsky is a Class D licensed driver with a 1412 iRating, which again indicates that he's done very little in the way of official iRacing races. So,
Reed Sweeney, our leader, has an iRating of 874.
Not the sort of thing you'd expect from a guy who's leading a pretty high quality field like this. So
you call that a naturally talented Reed Sweeney.
Well, I mean, 874 means he's gone backwards since he's bought the service. So I imagine there's a story behind that iRating that probably doesn't reflect what we're seeing this evening.
So the top 3 is Sweeney, James French in 2nd, Matt Phill in 3rd, Brendan Baker, your race 1 winner, in 4th. Not really having to defend very much from Alex Gomes in 5th. That margin is out quite a bit, but the gap from, let me make sure I have this right, Baker to Thill is now 1.9 seconds. I don't...
No, I think you do have that right. It's about
we're going to run out of time. Yeah, I think he's going to run out of time. We're working lap 21. Now reads 1 minute and 14 seconds left. And with Reed Sweeney coming up to the corkscrew, it'll be the final lap. White flag this time by.
Yeah.
Joseph one battle. There's a spin in front of those guys, but they've got away with it. It's Hugh North who's on a comeback trail and is much quicker right now than Alex Slipsky, so Alex could be losing another position here.
Yeah, he's hit him. He's hit him in the braking zone.
Hugh North has sensibly redressed the situation, managed to slow down enough to allow Alex to recover his Mercedes and get back into that position. I'd expect him to make another attack pretty soon, but that was sensible driving there from you.
I think that's the lap down Matt Strand that's behind him, so that's not for position.
Sweeney, incidentally, has begun his final lap, exiting turn 2, and swings it into the right-hander at turn number 3. We're going to stick with this battle with Hugh North and Alex Slipsky, because it is by far the most interesting thing we have going on track at the moment, and there's a lot to play for with just over a lap remaining for this pair. He's going to look right. Slipsky's going to defend, and North breaks early. Slipsky goes deep. They both make it to the apex, and Slipsky gets a really nice run off turn 11 to hold off North.
Better than I thought it was going to be, because he hit the inside curb.
No, he's really done well to sort of stave off any attack from Hugh North. He'd have to go really deep on the brakes, which he does, and closes right up again onto the diffuser of the 29 of Slipsky.
They need to resolve this so we can go back to Reed.
They do. We need to call Reed Sweeney across the line at some stage. Here he comes down through turn number 10. I'll let you handle that, Joseph. Through the right-hander and on the brakes into the left for the final time. Lap 22, Reed Sweeney is going to give him and his team, with a little bit of drama just ahead of him, $100 towards next year's SimCraft 24 Hours of Orlando entry. Congratulations to Reed Sweeney. And with that, we need to go back to Hugh North and Alex Slipsky, who are going to be side by side up the hill. No, they're not. Hugh North had to dab the brakes on the way up the hill to let Slipsky by. He dives up the inside. Very Zanardi-esque, but keeps it on track and is able to take seventh position away from the 29 of Alex Slipsky. And I think he's got more than enough in hand now to cover that from Alex through the final corner.
A little bit of last lap drama never hurt anyone.
No, and you know what? Halfway up that back straightaway, it looked like that move was absolutely off. Like, because Hugh North had to jump on the brakes.
It looked like he stayed in the throttle and then just trailed the brake just to stay off his bumper.
He did.
One more side-by-side battle, and it was for 12th place. Unfortunately, Gavin Bailiff has punted Perry Herndon off. 2 corners from the finish. Not quite as clean as our battle for 7th, unfortunately. Perry's going to recover, but having lost a number of positions after that.
I think he's going to come home well.
Yeah, Perry's back in 15th. That looks like that's where he'll finish, unfortunately.
Well, a little bit more happening, at least further down the field towards the end of that race. Still plenty to talk about, but things were well settled for the podium, with a nice 4-second margin between Sweeney back to James French in second, who was able to hold on there from Matt Thill in third. Alex Gomes did get past, or was ahead of Brendan Baker, correct?
Yes, that was as per
right
as I started the last lap, so no change there.
So Baker 5th from P1 last race. Wes Dushek 6th, held on ahead of Hugh North, obviously, who was able to make the move on Alex Slipsky there on the final lap. Jeffrey Smale comes home in P9, and Ryan Thomas rounds out your top 10, having not mentioned his name possibly all night. Nikita Ponaris has come home P11, another one of the classic Nikita quiet runs to the checkered flag without, well, really any dramas this time. It was a little more adventurous in race 1, but he's done well this time around. Gavin Bailiff in P12. Gene Thayer finishes 13th. Blake McCord 14th, and Perry Herndon, who we just mentioned, sort of caught himself into a little bit of drama a couple of corners from the finish, finishes in P15. Yeah, I'll say. The middle stint of that race absolutely flew by, and I don't know if it was because things were sort of changing as they went through lap traffic, or if there was just enough on-track action to hold our attention. But I feel like we lost about a dozen laps in the middle of the race there that they just don't exist anymore.
I think I might have just blacked out from everything that was happening.
Yeah, and I will say this, to everybody's credit, I think the rejoins and some of the issues we've seen over the last couple of weeks took a big step forward tonight, in particular in race 2. I think it's been dealt with and addressed fairly quickly, and it's allowed a lot more clean racing to take place, even if one of the issues we saw did really interrupt and damage the battle we had going on for the lead.
I'm undercutting your clean racing argument by doing my crash montage.
I'd agree. We were looking for trying to get more than 14 cars home on the lead. We got 17, and I think that is a good line in the sand to draw between those who had a clean race and those who didn't. Obviously, Andrea Azzolini, our first car lap down in 18th place. We saw early in the race. He actually didn't have any particular issues, just the drive-through penalty, obviously making a pretty what was deemed to be a dangerous pass. I think it was for the lead at the time, if I remember.
Yes, it was.
So yeah, he ended up 18th, but everyone ahead of him, you'd have to say, had a relatively clean run. Austin Olds, Jason Drescher, and Perry Herndon with that spin on the last lap, which means that, I think we can safely say that we're seeing a trend in the right direction here.
I'm still undercutting your point, Scott. I'm sorry. There was a melee at the corkscrew on the first lap, which you had pointed out.
I'm well aware of that, and these are the guys from 18th on downwards. They're still half our field, having what you could call some sort of disaster. But yeah, the other thing is, while Brendan was going through his wrap-up there, I'm trying to find drivers in the top, even the top 15 of the championship, who also finished in the top 15 of this race. There aren't a lot of them. We've got obviously Alex Gomes, who was fourth in the championship coming into this round, finished fourth in this race. The next would be Blake McCord, really. Jeffrey Smale, who was 15th in the championship coming in, it came home ninth.
Ryan Thomas, Scott, was P5 coming into tonight and wound up P10 for this race.
Right. So
if
yeah,
anybody's going to make gains here, it might be Ryan Thomas, who of course also finished second in race 2 last week at Lime Rock.
Absolutely. So yeah, but then we've got drivers such as Trevor Andrusko, who was showing great pace in practice earlier. Did he end up racing?
He didn't race tonight. Neither did Justin Richezin.
I noticed Trevor Andrusko's name was really high up in the practice sessions from earlier in the week, so it's a bit of a surprise to see that he didn't end up racing tonight. And Andre Azzolini, we've documented he had issues in both races. Blake McCord had a solid race 1, but a difficult race 2, finishing 14th. And Matt Strand, difficulties in both races, ended up a lap down in 20th in race 2, just there. Hugh North had a good run back through the field. I think he had early issues, or possibly a bad race 1, which meant a bad grid position for race 2, but he ended up 7th, but he was 8th in the championship coming in, and a long way off, a good 60 points off our championship leader Nick Rowland, who himself, of course, ended up 30th and 10 laps down, having that massive crash with the spinning BMW while being in the front group. So yeah, it's going to be a huge shake-up in the championship after this one.
Yeah, and I honestly, looking through some of these names, I hadn't expected it to be a particularly compelling battle through the championship. I mean, Roland obviously has been the most consistent over the first 3 races, but race 2 there in particular really threw things into chaos. And, once the points are tabulated, probably, I was going to say Monday or Tuesday, but today's not Sunday. So before the end of the week, we'll have some kind of answer on where we stand after 2 out of 5 races. I think it's going to really throw the balance of the season into some semblance of chaos, which, frankly, I'm actually kind of excited for.
On a totally different subject, I've just had a look down for our drivers who graduated from Room 2 in Race 1. They were Chris McCoy and Jonathan Patterson, and they finished line astern, 24th and 25th, a lap down. I imagine losing a lap in a 30-minute race means that they probably had some level of disaster throughout the race. But it's good to see that they got to the finish, and hopefully we'll see them next week get a fast enough lap time in the mid-week practice sessions or early week practice sessions to get them into Room 1, having got this little bit more experience. I think Chris McCoy was in Room 1 at Lime Rock. I seem to remember calling that car spinning in Turn 1 at least once last week. But Jonathan Patterson's a new name to us, so let's hope he can more consistently get into Room 1 through the remaining.
As we get more and more drivers into the post-race room here on the USEC Karting Discord, I'll just send a message here if you're up for an interview, and we'll unmute you and have a quick chat about your pair of races tonight. Happy to have that discussion. I think, for starters, we've got Matt Thill of Simcraft, not making a sim racing debut, but certainly his USAC Karting Invitational eSeries debut. Matt, that's all right.
Yeah, it's not bad. We had a great time. Little assistance into the spin in turn 2 on the first race, but good way to battle back. And the Simcraft AMG Mercedes was pretty spot on for the second race. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of luck with some of the calamity ahead of us.
Did you find yourself spending a lot of the night sort of picking through some of that chaos, or were you able to spend most of the second race sort of cruising and managing yourself back to third?
Yeah, in the second race, I tried to manage my tires as best I could, and getting through the pack was, it's a lot easier getting through them one by one. And fortunately, in the latter part of the race, there was a big contact with the leaders that allowed me to gain as many places as I did. Otherwise, I probably would have been P6, P7. But fortunately, there was parting of the seas with the leaders, and we were able to take a podium finish.
You back for more after this, Matt, or is this just sort of a one-off appearance?
Well, the next race is my home track, Road America. I was very excited to share the podium with my Sheboygan mate James French. So it was good to be back seeing him, and he's our Simcraft teammate in the 24 Hours of Orlando as well. So it's good to share the podium with him. But Road America got quite a few live races there, so it should be a good one next week.
Yeah, and as you said, so many drivers here participated on track before the Simcraft 24 Hours of Orlando. Happy to have you along as well for the USAC Karting Invitational eSeries, and hope we get to see plenty more throughout the rest of our little mini season here. So thanks for joining us, Matt, and best of luck. Great run tonight, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks a lot, guys. Great job on the broadcast. Appreciate it.
Really enjoying it so far. I think we've got Nikita Ponaris, our favorite charger from the back of the field up to the front. Nikita, you've come from more or less the back to, I think, P11 at the end of all that.
Yeah, I don't know why I put myself in that situation, but yeah, we came through the back again.
Yeah, a little more adventurous on race 1, I think. We called your name a couple of times in places we didn't normally expect to find you, but we did expect to find you somewhere near the top 10 at the end of race 2, and that's exactly what happened. Able to calm down a little bit in race 2, or were you the victim of some things going on around you the first time?
Yeah, the first race was, it was my first time in the Audi. I was trying to get used to it. I made the switch from the Ferrari and was just trying to learn. And during the race, just got caught up in a few wrecks and just put me to the back. And then there was that one that just finished me off. But it was definitely eventful for the first race.
We did notice, actually, that the move over from the Ferrari to the Audi. Is that just trying to find a little bit more pace, or is the Ferrari sort of a more uncomfortable car to drive than the Audi's been?
Yeah, it was kind of both. I was trying to just try something new, see if I can get something maybe handling a bit better. The Ferrari was a little hard to get. It wasn't as easy to get into the corners as fast as other people. It would just be hard to get loose and other things. So I just wanted to try out the Audi C, and it looked pretty good.
And it seems to have paid off anyway, other than a little slip up in race 1 there. But you're able to recover for race 2, and I think we had already sort of identified that there's some chaos going on in the championship. So hopefully, that race 2 result is able to put you in a better position moving forward to week 3 at Road America, where we'll be back, of course, as well. I appreciate you coming in after the race there, Nikita, and like I said, nice run.
Yeah, thank you.
If anybody else is interested in an interview, more than happy to talk to you. TJ makes a great comment here in the Discord where, as mentioned, we head to Road America next week with nice long straights to stretch our legs and braking zones for passing, which I think we're all looking forward to as a nice change from the bull ring nature of Lime Rock last week, and some of the aggression, I think, is the right word that's required around WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. In the meantime, if we haven't got any interviews, Joseph, your thoughts on the evening?
I was shocked at how quickly everything went by. I mean, genuinely, I remember looking up both races. I looked up, and it was 10 minutes had already passed, which that's like 7 or 8 laps still. That's, 10 minutes isn't nothing. So it's insane how much action there's been, and how many different things can happen over the course of a lap. I can't keep up with replays. So people are doing alternatively great and terrible jobs, which is very entertaining for me personally.
It's amazing. I mean, we spend a whole lot of time doing endurance racing. It's not hard to switch back to sprint racing, but there's really no time to settle into a rhythm, because from the green flag, everything has a consequence that may or may not be recoverable, and you've got to kind of keep track of all that, and it plays a big role in the way the results end up at the end of just half an hour of racing. So it's a lot to keep track of, but at least from our perspective, watching it all from the outside, it's absolutely fascinating and totally engaging and enthralling. And like you said, the time literally just disappears off the clock. It feels like 2 or 3 laps have gone by and you've already lost half the race.
Yeah,
it's been thoroughly entertaining from my end.
I think the GIF that Hugh has posted in in the race lobby chat, I think really sums it up. It's our friend Larry Enticer.
Yeah, Canadian cousin to Joe Exotic, we think.
Those
Denim Joe Exotic.
those family trees may have branched and rejoined.
Is that a maple tree? Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a few.
Scott.
We do have a few more people in this room. I don't know if we've got time to get to everybody.
We have time to get to a few. I'm looking for some messages directly to me, so I know to unmute you and we can have a quick chat. There's plenty of you here. If you're just along for the ride to listen in and hang out for the last few minutes here, you're certainly welcome to do that as well. In the meantime, Scott, you've been silent in the last couple minutes here. Your thoughts?
As I was saying, we've kind of seen a lot of the same trends that we saw in the first two rounds, but with a little bit more space to play with. We've had the race play out a little bit more cleanly. Like we obviously had these storylines of our top 5 or so drivers, and then people like Gene Thayer and Nikki Tabonaris coming through the field. But then at some point, about halfway through both the races at Lime Rock, the laps traffic got involved and everything went crazy, and that happened a lot less this time. We got to see more of a genuine race, as I'm again undercut by Joseph's crash montage going on at the same time.
I'm only on lap 14.
I didn't realize it was chronological. I was thinking it was random, but and we had some good battles. And one of them was involved. Well, a couple of them were involving Alex Slupski, who I noticed is in the post-race interviews room with us. So he'd be a great candidate to have a little chat with if he's around. But it was just good to see some nice race-long storylines that we could follow the whole way through.
A view towards organization now, maybe a little away from the racing action and the championship action, but TJ Halsema is with us. PMG Promotions sort of organizing the USACKarting.com Invitational eSeries. TJ, 3 weeks in the books, 2 scored rounds, 4 total races. How's it so far?
I think people are improving week to week. You got a lot of mix of different people running different equipment and different feels of how that equipment's going for them. And so you got a lot of drivers that are still kind of getting used to playing on a video game or on a console and not feeling it with the rear end. But I was just looking at the incident report, and it looks like incidents were down by about 40% over last week. So great improvement there. And I look forward to Road America upcoming and getting back to some long straightaways and fast racing.
Yeah, and I have to your credit, I hadn't realized we were having live stewarding going on, but Jason Burgess did a great job in the second race addressing some of the indiscretions that were, even if they were accidents, and I'm sure they all were, but they were addressed immediately. The appropriate action was taken, and from an organizational perspective, everything just seemed to be run very professionally and very smoothly from the top down.
Yeah, we're learning all around. I mean, it was good. I learned a lot about how the iRacing incident system works. I think we're getting better on that front. I'm picking up a third person for next week, just to make sure we have more eyeballs to get involved in conversations to make the right choices.
Well, we look forward to that. Hopefully you won't need it. It is Road America, like you said, nice long straights, and 4 miles for our 40 cars to spread out instead of cramming it into 1.5 miles or two and some change like we had tonight. A little more margin for error, and I think, with any luck, it'll result in some even better racing. We're sort of really to finish, getting through into the middle portion of the season and really finishing off strongly. We've come a long way since that first race at Okayama, and we've really enjoyed everything that you guys have put on. So thanks for all this, and like I said, great job so far, and we're all really looking forward to what the rest.
I appreciate it. We're having probably just as much fun talking out through the week.
You are.
But what we can do better, and what lays in store for the future.
So really appreciate it, TJ. This has been a great holdover from some Craft 24 Hours of Orlando last year, and in the current global climate, really enjoying the opportunity for everybody to race together, get angry at each other, spin each other off, blow off some steam maybe. But it's been a good opportunity to be together nonetheless. Alex Slupski is with us as well. who had maybe the most entertaining race too out of anybody in the field.
It was a fun one. I had the stream on, and my parents were watching, and they said that I was the talk of the town. So
it was Scott. I think had his eyes locked pretty much on you and your battle with Hugh North there through the end of the race. There was a lot of cat and mouse there. It wasn't just a hey, I've got to defend and go as fast as I can. There was some real planning and racecraft that you sort of had to execute right the way through the race.
yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, I was pretty terrified to be starting from the front with all those fast guys around me, and James French and Matt, super quick, and thought I got a really good jump on the start, but then I obviously binned it going into the corkscrew and tried not to take any guys out coming back on. But yeah, with him behind me, the gap was just slinking back and forth, and I feel like he could go deeper into the brake zones than I could, but then I would kind of check him up and then accelerate on exit. But eventually he just dove down the inside in the last corner, and I didn't have much for him. So no, but it was super fun. The first race was fun too.
Yeah,
I had a question for you, as a matter of fact. So that end of race 1, how much does that reverse grid, that reverse top 10, come into play in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's a fun addition to the series. I went back through the broadcast in between races, and I heard that you guys were wondering if I perhaps dropped back through the field on purpose, and then cited some of my lap times. And no, I did not drop back through the field on purpose. I just got slower, and I haven't.
That was
mystery solved.
All Scott.
Yeah, but it was cool to. Once I ended up 10th, I was like, oh boy, I'm on the front of the next one. So.
Well,
yeah,
we really
I'm
enjoyed
sure that
watching.
was a nerve-wracking start. You looked like you were getting kind of either nudged or pressured by everybody in the field.
Yeah, definitely. Which they have a right to. They were, at least a second quicker than me a lot of the time. But I was happy with the top 10 finish in the end.
Well, we really enjoyed watching it, and certainly look forward to following your adventures next week at Road America. And thanks for stopping by for an interview after the race. And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Of course, thanks. Great job on the broadcast, guys. Looks awesome.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thank you. If there's anybody else, you're more than welcome. Just drop me a line here on Discord. We'll wrap things up with a quick interview. Just another minute or so. Like we've mentioned a couple times now, Road America next week. We'll head after that to Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, sort of the spiritual home of USAC. And then I think TJ will have an announcement up on the final race of the season to make up for the preseason event at Okayama. That'll give us a full 5-race championship over the next couple of weeks. So we look forward to that. But in the meantime, it's been a great week, too, for the USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries. Lime Rock was exactly what we expected last week. Laguna Seca, tough to know what to expect, but obviously every driver that's sort of new to iRacing has another week under their belt, and everybody's a little more comfortable with the cars and the setups, and it's really shown through and a thoroughly enjoyable set of races tonight. So with that, Scott Michaels, any closing thoughts?
No, just looking forward to next time. Everyone's been looking forward to saying how much they're looking forward to Road America because it's even more wide open and long straights, but it's also the spiritual home of the dive bombs. So let's keep hope that these drivers keep improving their own standards for what they would like to see from each other and themselves in terms of driving standards. Let's hope that we can get through next time without any silly moves. It's not the kind of place where you tend to have enormous pileups. There's quite a lot of space and not so many combination corners. So if we do have dive bombs and crashes, hopefully we'll see people be able to navigate them safely and not end up with the Lime Rock style 10-car pileups. But yeah, no, looking forward to next week really, and then Indianapolis I think afterwards. And yeah, wrapping up the season. Anything from you, Joseph?
No, basically mirroring what Scott said. Turn 1 is going to be immense, and then the kink is going to be. I may have sleepless nights thinking about the kink.
Turn 1's a good point actually. Yeah, you see a lot. If anyone's been addicted to watching iRacing clip compilations like I have every now and again. You see a lot of issues before even turn one at Road America, just because the front straight is so narrow. You've got the blind crest, so if anything happens in front of you, you don't tend to see it until too late. So yeah, let's just hope everyone prioritizes a safe run into turn one, get us through there and into the bulk of the race before going too crazy with the dive bombs and trying to squeeze three wides. Otherwise, we're going to have some a lot of carnage potentially.
I think in a phrase, what we're looking for next week is maybe a little margin for error. The hope is that you need less and less of it with the more experience and more time on track and more time around each other. But in any case, I think there will be more of an opportunity for just a little slip up here or there that won't put so many cars at risk. And anyway, Road America is a great track for racing and a great way for these GT3 cars to stretch their legs and let a little bit of talent shine through in braking zones and turn-in and that sort of thing. So really looking forward to that. A couple more races here on Wednesday nights. DriversEye Live has them all for the USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries. Happy to have everybody's company. Myself, Brendan Kazmarek, joined by Joseph Mudrock and Scott Michaels, as we have been for the last 2 weeks. We will see you 7:15 p.m. as always on next Wednesday night from Road America for 2 more 30-minute sprint races and the USACkarting.com Invitational eSeries. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you then.